Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel on Mitzvah Hashem today. We will be learning Daf Nun Gimel Amid Aleph. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanasuna Batzara Bashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakayim Yerachem Alehem V'Yitziim Mitzar Lervacha Me'afel La'ira Umishibud L'Geula Hashta Bagala V'Zman Kariv and Amen. Our learning should be a schus for Shalema for Tzvi ben Leah Miriam, and our learning should be a schus for Yisrael ben Rachel, Yonasan ben Michal, and Yoel ben Michal. Rabbi Shalom should watch over them together with all of our other brothers and sisters that are in harm's way. B'chol Makom Shehem. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today 2 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch on Nun Beis, Amid Beis, Siman Reish Ayin Gimel Sif Hey. So, we've been learning all about the halachas of Kiddush. Kiddush by day, Kiddush by night. We have a requirement, a mitzvah, to make Kiddush. Zachar is Yom HaShabbos L'Kadshai. We have a mitzvah to make Kiddush on Shabbos. Now, like other mitzvahs, the mitzvah of Kiddush comes together with certain halachic requirements. So, for example, lechatchila, we make Kiddush al hayayin. Kiddush is supposed to be made on a kais of yayin. When you make the Kiddush al hayayin, there's a certain minimum amount of wine that you must drink. You have to drink at least a mole lugmav of yayin in order to be yotze Kiddush. Another requirement of Kiddush that we've been discussing at length now is Kiddush b'makom suda. We learn out from the pasuk in Yeshaya v'karas al Shabbos eineg that you have to make the Kiddush, you have to proclaim, and you have to be zoicher, you have to commemorate Kedusha Shabbos b'makom suda. It has to be attached to a suda. In order to be attached to a suda, it has to be in the location of the suda. So you have to make Kiddush where you're going to have a suda, and you have to actually have a suda. So that's the requirement of Kiddush b'makom suda. Now, what happens if you fail to meet those requirements? Well, if you fail to meet those requirements, you are not yotze Kiddush. So, for example, we learned in this Siman Reish Ayin Gimel Siv Gimel, Im Kiddush v'loy Saad. Let's say you made Kiddush, but you did not have a suda. So you made Kiddush, and you drank a maloi lugmav of yayin, you drank a cheekful of wine, but you didn't have a suda. You didn't eat anything. Well, then you didn't meet the requirements of Kiddush. You didn't meet the requirement of Kiddush b'makom suda. So now that you didn't meet the requirement of Kiddush b'makom suda, you are not yotze your chiyuv of Kiddush. Not only were you not yotze your chiyuv of Kiddush, at least according to the way the Mishnah Berurah understands the mechaber, if you didn't have Kiddush b'makom suda, there's another aspect to Kiddush. Besides the fact that you have to be yotze your chiyuv of Kiddush, Kiddush is also what is matter you to eat. We learned halacha that prior to Kiddush, you're not allowed to eat anything. You're not even allowed to take a drink of water. So you're not allowed to eat or drink anything before Kiddush. Well, if you made Kiddush, but you didn't meet the requirement of Kiddush b'makom suda, so you weren't yotze Kiddush, you're also still not allowed to eat or drink because you didn't make Kiddush yet. So you can't eat or drink. Now, against that backdrop, once we understand that these are the requirements of Kiddush, and we understand what the ramifications are if you don't meet the requirements of Kiddush, so now it's very important for us to understand what makes Kiddush b'makom suda. What constitutes a suda? In order for Kiddush to be Kiddush b'makom suda, that means that there has to have been a suda. What constitutes a suda? What are the minimum requirements of suda so that one can say that he made Kiddush and he did it b'makom suda? And that's what we're going to discuss over here in today's shir. Siman Reish Ayin Gimel Sif Hey, says the mechaber. Kasva Ga'onim. The Ga'onim write, Ha de ein Kiddush ela b'makom suda. When we learn this halacha that ein Kiddush b'makom suda, what constitutes a suda? Says the mechaber, afilu achal davar muat. Even if you eat a very small amount of food, a davar muat. And we're going to see from the mechaber going further that when he says this, he's speaking about bread. So, afilu achal davar muat. Even if you eat a very small amount of lechem, of bread, oy shasa kais yayin, or you drink a kais of yayin. How much? Shechayiv alav bracha. You eat a small amount of lechem, but enough lechem that it would require a bracha achrona. What's the bracha achrona on lechem? Berachas hamazon. So if you eat enough lechem that you have to make berachas hamazon, or shasa kais yayin, or you drink a kais of yayin, how much yayin? Again, shechayiv alav bracha, enough yayin that you require a bracha achrona, and ala gefen val priya gefen on yayin. How much is that? A revius, the Mishnah Berurah is going to say. Yotza yedei kiddush b'makom suda. Now you have been yotza, you have met the bar of kiddush b'makom suda. So again, what's the Mechaber saying? We're talking all about the need for kiddush b'makom suda. Okay, what's the minimum requirement of a suda so that you should have kiddush b'makom suda? Says the Mechaber, a small amount of lechem. How much lechem? Enough that you're chayav a bracha achrona. How much is that? A kazayas of lechem. Or drink wine. How much wine? Enough wine that you would be chayiv a bracha achrona on yayin. How much is that? Says the Mishnah Berurah revius. So if you make kiddush and you eat a kazayas of lechem, or you drink a revius of yayin, and we'll get a little bit more into that as far as the revius of yayin, you are now yoitza kiddush b'makom suda, because you made kiddush and you did it together with enough that constitutes a suda. Therefore, continues the Mechaber, top line in Gimel Amud Aleph, once you did this, the goymer seudasei b'makom acher, now you could move away from your current location and you could go finish your suda somewhere else. So let's make this picture, okay? You come home Friday night, you make kiddush, all right? Now the kiddush has to be b'makom suda. So you made your kiddush, now go wash, come back, make hamoitzi on lechem mishnah, and eat a kazayas of lechem. Now you ate a kazayas lechem, you were already yoitzi kiddush b'makom suda. Now your wife says, you know what, instead of eating over here in the kitchen, let's all get up now, let's go into the dining room, and let's serve the gefilte fish and the chicken soup and the roast chicken and the potato kugel in the dining room. No problem, because you were already yoitze kiddush in the kitchen. You made kiddush in the kitchen. You had it together with a suda, because you washed and you ate a kazayas of lechem, so that's already a suda. Now, you want to go into the dining room and finish eating in the dining room? Fine. You didn't make kiddush in the dining room? So what? You were already yoitze kiddush. You had kiddush, and you did kiddush b'makom suda. So now you can finish the rest of your suda in the dining room. Or, I'll tell you even better, you made kiddush in the kitchen, and when you made kiddush in the kitchen, you drank a revius of yayin. Maybe 2 reviusin. We'll get to that. But you met the requirement of drinking a revius of yayin. You drank a revius of yayin, that's already a suda. So now you want to wash and go eat the meal in the dining room? You could do that, no problem, because you were yoitze kiddush b'makom suda in the kitchen. Once you yoitze kiddush b'makom suda, you were yoitze kiddush. Once you yoitze kiddush, you're no longer locked to the location that you made kiddush in until you meet the requirement of kiddush b'makom suda. You're locked to the location that you made kiddush in. You have to make a suda now. And you have to do it quickly. Remember, we learned that in the Ramah. You have to eat right away, preferably. So you're locked to this location. If you leave this location, you weren't yoitze kiddush b'makom suda. You're not yoitze kiddush. You need a new kiddush. But if you eat a kazayas of lechem, or you drink a revius of yayin, fine, you're done. You were yoitze kiddush. You were yoitze kiddush b'makom suda. Now you could go eat somewhere else without a problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah back on Nun Beis, Amud Beis. Mishnah Berurah is Chaf Aleph. Muat, you only have to eat a small amount. Hainu al kol panim shir kazayas. How much is a small amount? Says the Mishnah Berurah, kazayas of lechem. Dahai shechayev alav bracha atarvayu kai. Because when the Mechaber says, if you look at the words of the Mechaber, he says, afilu achal davar muat, even if you eat a small amount, or you shas a kais yayin, or you drink a kais of yayin, shechayev alav bracha. Enough that you're chayiv a bracha achrona. Those 3 words, shechayiv alav bracha, go back on both cases, on ochal davar muat and on shasa kais yayin. For each one, what's the minimum amount? The amount that necessitates a bracha achrona, which by lechem is a kazayas. Ois katan chaf beis, bracha. Hainu kishir revius. When we talk about yayin, it means you drank a revius. Shechayiv love bracha achrona, because once you drink a revius of yayin, you're chayiv a bracha achrona vala gefen val priya gefen. Now, point out the Mishnah Berurah, v'sasam ha-mechaber kan, the mechaber is writing the halacha over here, kedas ha-poiskim de la bracha achrona tzar shir revius. The mechaber, the way you write sifhei, is making a halachic assumption. He's saying over here that what's the shear that you need a bracha achrona on yayin, a revius. While the Pri Megadim says that the truth is, even if you'll say that for a bracha achrona you don't need a revius, could be that to be chayiv in a bracha achrona, you're chayiv in a bracha achrona even if you drink less than a revius. Even if you drink the equivalent of a kezayis, it could be you're already chayiv in a bracha achrona. But le'inyan shia nikra b'makom suda le'chashu b'pachus mirevius yayin. But when it comes to being yoytze kiddush b'makom suda, you need a chashuv amount of yayin, and that would be a revius. Going to Nun Gimel Aben Aleph, Mishnah Berurah Eis Katan Chaf Gimel. Now, what the Mechaber said over here is, once you have a kezayis of lechem or a revius of yayin, you're now yoytze kiddush b'makom suda. Says the Mechaber, once you're yoytze kiddush b'makom suda, you're no longer locked to this location. Now, if you want to go to a different location and you want to finish your suda in a different location, you may do so. Points out the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Chaf Gimel, there's a whole other piece of halacha that we're not dealing with over here. There's a whole other shaila that comes up if you do this that we dealt with in Hilchas Brachas in Siman Kufay and Ches that we're not discussing over here. And what is that? Well, very simple. Let's give the scenario that I gave before. You went ahead and you made kiddush in the kitchen. All right, you made kiddush in the kitchen and you drank a revius of yayin. All right, you're yoytze kiddush b'makom suda. Now, says the Mechaber, you could leave the kitchen and you could go to a different room. You could go to a different location. Or you could even go to a different house because you were already yoytze kiddush b'makom suda. So maybe you want to go to the neighbor now. Says the Mechaber, you could go to a different location and you could finish your suda over there. Now, that's very nice in the world of the halachas of Kiddush. But how about in the world of Hilchas Brachas? You're doing a shinui makam. You're uprooting yourself from the location in which you made your bracha rishona. You made a bari priya gafen. Bari priya gafen is bracha rishona. It's a berachas hanenin. That's the bracha that you made to allow yourself to drink wine. Now you're leaving and you're going to a new location. Do you need a new bracha rishona? You're making a shina makam. How about benching? Let's say you made kiddush in the kitchen, and then you washed, and then you ate a kezayis of lechem. Once you eat a kezayis of lechem, you have a chiyuv of birkas hamazon. Now you want to get up and you want to go to the neighbor's house. Do you have to bench first? You just ate a kezayis of lechem over here in your house. Do you have to bench before you get up and make a shinu makayim and go to your neighbor's house and eat over there? So the answer to both of those shilas, we learned this in Siman Kuf Ayin Ches. And over there, it's the subject of a complex machlokes between the Mechaber and the Ramah. We paskin like the Ramah. The Ramah over there says that shinui makayim has the same halachas. We look at it the same way as a hesach hadas, as being nimlach, as forgetting about the fact that you're in the middle of a meal. What comes out in the halacha over there is that if you're talking about washing on bread, or you're talking about a mezainis on cake, or you're talking about a bari priya gefen on yayin, all of these are types of eating that require a bracha achrona b'mekaymam. You're going to have to make a bracha achrona in the place that you eat. So over there comes out the halacha that if you make a bracha rishona on wine, or you make a hamoitzi on pas, and now you want to get up and you want to go somewhere else, you're allowed to. And as long as you're not mesiach das, as long as you still have in mind that you're in the middle of a meal, you could go eat in the new location without a new bracha rishona, and You could go continue eating in the new location, and you could bench over there. Or you can make a bracha achroina over there. You don't need to make a bracha achroina over here in the first location before you go to the second location. That's the way the Ramah paskins in Siman Kof Ayin Ches. So points out the Mishnah Berurah over here in Ois Katan Chav Gimel, when the Mechaber tells you that once you're Yoitze Kiddush B'Makom Suda, you can now get up and go to a different location and finish your Suda over there, says the Mishnah Berurah, Ayin Le'el B'Simen Kof Ayin Ches Sif Beis Ba'agah. Take a look at Kof Ayin Ches Sif Beis in the words of the Ramah, that while it's true that you could get up over here, go to a new location, and you do not have to bench first, you could bench over there and cover the food that you're going to eat over there and the food that you already ate over here, but that's not lechatchila. The lechatchila lo yaker mimikaymai b'li berkas hamazon. If you washed over here and you ate a kazayas of challah over here, really lechatchila you should bench here before you get up and go over there. Now, if you do that, of course, you're going to need a new hamaitzi over there. But are you going to need a new kiddush? No, because you were already Yaitze Kiddush. You were Yaitze Kiddush, you were Yaitze Kiddush B'Makom Suda. You're covered as far as Kiddush is concerned. Ach b'di'evet, but b'di'evet kisha akar, if you did leave the first location and go to the second location, ein tzarich levarchis berkas hamazon mikaydim. You don't have to bench. First I have to bench on what I ate in location A before I could continue eating in location B. No, ela akar gemar hasuda, you could bench after the Suda in location B. Eis Katan Chav Dalid, you could finish your Suda B'Makom Acher. V'sham ein tzarich levarach oid ala kais kaidim sheyisad. You don't have to make a new kiddush in location B. The kvar yotze yidei kiddush, because you already yotze kiddush B'Makom Suda. You're covered. You're fine. So now, just in a nutshell, what did the Mechaber tell us over here? We have a requirement of Kiddush B'Makom Suda. Since we have a requirement of Kiddush B'Makom Suda, we need to understand what constitutes a Suda. The Mechaber tells us in the name of the Geonim, when it comes to Challah, when it comes to Yayin, what constitutes a Suda? A kezayis of Lechem, the amount of lechem that requires birkas hamazon, a revius of yayin, the amount of yayin that requires a bracha achrona of ala gefen val priya gefen. That constitutes a suda. Therefore, if you make kiddush in location A, and then right after you make kiddush, you drink a revius of yayin, or right after you make kiddush, you wash and you eat a kezayis of lechem, you have now been yoitze kiddush. You have been yoitze kiddush b'makom suda. Now you can do what you want. You're no longer locked to this location. You want to go somewhere else and finish your suda somewhere else? You can. You could go somewhere else and finish your suda. Do you need a new kiddush in the new location? No. You already yoitze kiddush. You already yoitze kiddush b'makom suda. Go ahead, eat. As far as bracha achrona, do you have to bench in location A? If you washed and you ate a kezayis of challah in location A, do you have to bench in location A before you go to location B? Says the Mishnah Berurah based on Kof Ayin Ches Sif Beis the Ramah, lechatchila, yes. Lechatchila, you should bench first here in location A. Then go to location B. Wash, make a new hamaitzi, and eat in location B. Do you have to make kiddush first? No, you're done with kiddush. You took care of your chiyuv of kiddush, and you had kiddush b'makom suda. B'di'evet, let's say you did not bench first. Is that okay? B'di'evet, if you went to location B without first benching in location A, you could continue eating in location B, and you could bench at the end of your suda in location B, and that will cover whatever you ate in location B and whatever you ate in location A. Do you need a new bracha rishona in location B? No, also based on the Ramah and Kof Ayin Ches Sif Beis. You don't need a new bracha rishona unless you were Mesiach Das. From the time that you made the bracha rishona in location A and you went to location B, if you got involved in something else, you got involved in a whole conversation with somebody, or you went for a long walk and you were Mesiach Das, then you need a new bracha rishona. But if you weren't Mesiach Das, you do not need a new bracha rishona. Okay, now let's continue the Mechaber. So I told you that the Mechaber over here, when the Mechaber said on the bottom line on Nun Beis, Afilu ochal davar muat, even if you ate a small amount of food, the Mechaber is talking about lechem. Well, we see that now here on the top line of Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, middle of the line. Says the Mechaber, V'dafka ochal lechem oishasa yayin. Says the Mechaber, when I'm telling you that the minimum requirement of a Suda for Kiddush b'makom Suda is eating a small amount of food, drinking a small amount of yayin, enough to be yoitza, enough to be mechayev you in a bracha achrona. When I'm telling you that, you should know this only works. V'dafka ochal lechem oishasa yayin. This only works if you ate bread or you drank wine. Aval ochal peiros. But let's say you made Kiddush and you drank a maloi lugmav of yayin, and now you had a fruit salad. You ate some apples, some pears, some grapes, a small amount of grapes. Let's keep grapes out of it for the moment. You had apples, you had a pear, I don't know, you had a cantaloupe, right? There's a melon bowl by a Kiddush. So you had a bowl full of melon. You had watermelon and cantaloupe and honeydew. Are you yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda? Says the Mechaber. No, that doesn't meet the requirements of Suda. That's not choshev. That's not a Suda. Lechem, that's a Suda. Revius yayin, that's a Suda. Cantaloupe, honeydew, watermelon, an apple, that's not a Suda. So even if you ate 3 apples, or you ate a big honking bowl of melon salad, that is not going to constitute a Suda, and then you're not yoitza Kiddush b'makom Suda. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Chav Hey. This works if you ate lechem, or shasa yayin, or you drank wine. Okay, everybody's listening to the shir, and everybody's wondering, how about cake? Says the Mishnah Berurah. Certainly, if you ate cakes, pastries that are made out of the chameshes mine dagon, the 5 species of grain, wheat, barley, rye, oat, spelt. If you ate cakes, you ate pastries that are made out of the chameshes mine dagon, that's kolshkein diyotza. Then certainly you're yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda if you had a kezayis. What's the certainly? What's the kolshkein? Tehem chashivi tveilu Suda Shabbos biyayin. Because in the context of Suda's Shabbos, cake is more chashuv than yayin. Yayin is a drink. Chameshes mine dagon, cake, that's a food. And chameshes mine dagon, that's more of Suda than a drink of yayin is. So if the Mechaber is telling me that you could be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with a kois of yayin, with a revius of yayin, you certainly could be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with a kezayis of cake. Aval, however, and this is very important, Aval, however, says the Mishnah Berurah, sheichar, to drink beer, usha'ar mashkin, or other drinks, to drink soda, afilu imay chamar medina, even bromfen, even schnapps, beer, drinks that are considered chamar medina, to drink drinks, even if they're chamar medina, even if you drink a lot of it, ein yoytze b'makom Suda. You can't be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with other beverages other than yayin. Deloy soyed halev k'mo yayin, because they do not satiate. They don't satisfy a person the way yayin does. And what we're looking for over here is Kiddush b'makom Suda. So if they're not sad, if they don't satiate you, we can't call it Kiddush b'makom Suda. So the Mechaber said you could be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with a kezayis of lechem. Lechem is sad. Lechem satiates. You could be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with yayin. The Gemara in Brachos learns out that yayin is sad. Yayin satiates. Says the Mishnah Berurah you could be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with cake, because cake is mazoin. That's food. It's sad. Chameshes mine dagon, that could be considered Suda. Beer? Other beverages? No, you can't be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with that. V'ayin b'chedusha hagoyin Rabbi Akiva Eger b'Tesefes Shabbos. He sends us to the Rabbi Akiva Eger and to the Sefer Tesefes Shabbos. Shoichichu, who proved the lekami Rishonim that according to many Rishonim, eina yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda al yedei kois yayin. A lot of them hold, they disagree with this Mechaber, and they hold that you can't be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with a kois yayin. And therefore the Mishnah Berurah says, despite what the Mechaber says, that you could be yoytze Kiddush b'makom Suda with a kais of yayin. He brings down from Rabbi Akiva Eiger, Tosefes Shabbos, that many Rishonim disagree with this mechaber, and they hold that you cannot be Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda with yayin, and therefore the Mishnah Berurah is machriya she'ein lahakol b'zeh elamim kamatchak. You should only be Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda with yayin under pressing circumstances. Ois Katan Chavav. So the mechaber said you could be Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda with lechem, with yayin. We saw in the Mishnah Berurah you could be Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda with cake. But the mechaber said peiros, fruits, fruit salad, a melon bowl. No, you can't be Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda with that. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chafav. Peiros loy. The chameshes minim nikra mozain. The chameshes mine dagon, the 5 species of grain. That's called mozain. That's called nutritious food. That's food. That's sod. That could be suda. The yayin, and as far as yayin, the Gemara Brachos learns out, yayin sayed halev. Yayin satiates. It satisfies the heart. It satiates you. Aval shar dvarim, but other types of foods. Afilu ochal mehem harbe. Even if you eat a lot of it, einoi choshev suda klal. That is not considered a suda at all, and you cannot be Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda. And now the Mishnah Berurah says 3 very important lines here. Val kain, therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, ma'ashenoigim leilech lebeis chosan. The minute to go to a kiddush by a chosan, maybe an afraf, oy mila, or there's a Shabbos bris. You go to a bris mila kiddush on Shabbos. Ve'ein sham kisnin achar kiddush, and they don't have cake. Rak mine megodim, they only have sweets. That means they have salads by Priya Adama. They have apples and pears by Priya Eitz. They have shahakals, but they don't have cake. They don't have mezainis. Ein loy litaim sham klal. Hear what the Mishnah Berurah holds. The Mishnah Berurah holds that if you're not going to be Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda, which in this case you're not going to, if you go to a kiddush and they only have Bar Priya Eitz, they only have Shakal Niyah B'Dvaroi, and you don't have enough yayin that you're going to be able to drink a revius of yayin, the Mekadesh, the one who was making kiddush, he made kiddush on a nice big kais of yayin. He drank a revius of yayin, but they're not giving out wine. So you're not going to get a revius of yayin. So you're not going to drink a revius of yayin. You're not going to eat a kazayas of cake because there's no cake. You're not going to have a kazayas of challah because you're not washing now. It's by a kiddush. The only thing that you have are shahakals and Bar Priya Eitzes and Bar Priya Adamas. So that means you don't have Kiddush B'Makom Suda. Oh, you don't have Kiddush B'Makom Suda? Then you're not meeting the requirements of Kiddush. It's the same thing as if you would make Kiddush and not drink a Malay Lugmav of Yayin. You're not meeting the requirements of Kiddush. Kiddush B'Makom Suda is a primary requirement of Kiddush. Oh, if you're not meeting the requirements of Kiddush, you're not allowed to eat. You're not allowed to eat before Kiddush. So you went to a Kiddush, the guy in the front on the Mizrach made Kiddush, he drank a revius of Yayin, he's sitting pretty. But you're not being Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda, and you have no food here that meets the requirements of Kiddush B'Makom Suda. Well, that means you're not Yotzei Kiddush. If you're not Yotzei Kiddush, you're not allowed to eat before Kiddush. So says the Mishnah Berurah, in such a case, Ein Lo Litam Sham Klal. You're not allowed to eat anything. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, you'll turn around and you'll tell me, but I don't understand. The Mekadesh, the Rav who made Kiddush on the Mizrach, he drank a revius of Yayin. So what, says the Mishnah Berurah? Very nice. So he was Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda. That doesn't help you. You weren't Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda. V'loi sagi b'masha Mekadesh shoyse kol hakos, afshu masak revius. It doesn't help that the Mekadesh drank a revius. How does that help you? Yeah, he was Mekayim Kiddush B'Makom Suda. You weren't. And if you weren't Mekayim Kiddush B'Makom Suda, you're not allowed to eat. That only helps for the one who's actually drinking. It doesn't help anybody else. So this is the shita of the Mishnah Berurah. The shita of the Mishnah Berurah, Rabbi Say, is if you go to a kiddush and you are not Mekayim Kiddush B'Makom Suda because you don't drink a revius of yayin, you don't eat a kazayas of cake. So how are you Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda? If you're not Yotzei Kiddush B'Makom Suda, you're not allowed to eat because you're eating before kiddush. So you can't do that. You want to eat by a kiddush, you have to make sure that you eat a kazayas of cake. You have to make sure you drink a revius of yayin. Otherwise, you're not allowed to eat anything. V'hine, b'shiltei giborim kasav, the Shiltei Giborim writes not like this. The Shiltei Giborim says, daf beperois dai. The Shiltei Giborim disagrees with this mechaber. The Shiltei Giborim says you could be yoytze kiddush b'makom suda even with peros. Very interesting svara. Why? The chol suda Shabbos nechesheves kva, because the Shiltei Giborim says anything that you eat on Shabbos becomes elevated to a sudas kva. Now, there's a very interesting halachic precedent for this. This is actually a Mishnah in Masechtas Maasros. The halacha of Meiser is, we know that you grow produce in Eretz Yisrael, it's chayiv in Meiser, right? So let's say you grow grapes in Eretz Yisrael. You grow grapes in Eretz Yisrael, you got to give Meiser on the grapes. Are you allowed to eat from the grapes before you give Meiser? No. It's tevel. You didn't separate trubas and Meiser, so you're not allowed to eat yet. But the halacha really is that there's a certain type of eating that you're allowed to do. You know what that is? Achilas arai. If it's not an achilas kva, if it's not an achila that has a kvius to it, a formality to it, then it's just an achilas arai, it's just a snack. You're allowed to snack in an arai way before you separate trubas and meisers. So you're working in the field and you stack a grape, you pop a grape, that's achilas arai. Achilas arai you're really allowed to do before you separate trubas and meisers. But here's an interesting thing. On Shabbos, you're not even allowed to eat an achilas arai before you separate trubas and meisers. Why? Because eating that you do on Shabbos is always achilas kva. That's a maila to Shabbos. A maila to Shabbos is that any eating that you do on Shabbos is called kva. So says the Shiltei Giborim, therefore, yeah, you could be mekayim kiddush b'makom suda with cantaloupe by a kiddush on Shabbos. Why? Because since it's Shabbos, the eating of the cantaloupe is elevated to an achilas kva. So says the Shiltei Giborim. However, says the Mishnah Berurah, das HaTorah v'Shulchan Aruch Iker. The Magen Avram says that the opinion of the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch is the Iker over here. We don't paskin like the Shiltei Giborim. And therefore, you cannot be yoytze kiddush b'makom suda with cantaloupe. You can't be yoytze with apples. You can't be yoytze with shahakals. However, let's say somebody goes down to the kiddush after a long Shabbos davening and he's feeling shvach. And he doesn't have cake, so he doesn't have anything to be yoytze kiddush b'makom suda according to the Shulchan Aruch. Das Eza Achrayim, it's the opinion of some Achrayim, the Yesh Lismach ala Shiltei Giborim b'Shachris. Shabbos morning, you could be Saimach on this Shita of the Shiltei Giborim, and you could be Yoytze Kiddush b'makom suda with a Bar Priya Eitz. You could rely on the Shiltei Giborim. You feel Shvach, Shabbos morning, after davening, you could do that. Avo b'layla, but by Kiddush Friday night, which we always treat more stringently than Kiddush Shabbos by day, Ein lismach alav, you should not rely on the Shiltei Giborim, the Sha'ari Paiskim lo yisvirlu kavasei, because the other Paiskim do not agree, and they don't agree with this Magen Giborim, with this Shiltei Giborim. Now, just point out to you, interesting, the Yeshiva Zatzal, Rav Moshe Zechon Tzaddik V'Kadosh L'Vracha, disagreed with this Mishnah Berurah. The Rav Moshe had a very, very interesting opinion when it comes to Kiddush b'makom suda. Rav Moshe held, like we've said before, there are two aspects to Kiddush. One aspect to Kiddush is the chiyuv of Kiddush. You have to be yoytze your chiyuv of Zachar Yom Shabbos L'Kadshay. The second aspect to Kiddush is that you're not allowed to eat before you make Kiddush. So making Kiddush is what is mater you to eat. The Yeshiva Zatzal held that when it comes to Kiddush b'makom suda, the halacha is like this. In order to be yoytze Kiddush, you have to have Kiddush b'makom suda. But in order to be mater you to eat, you don't need Kiddush b'makom suda. Now, I'll tell you where this comes very much into play. Let's imagine it's Pesach. And let's imagine you don't eat gebrocks. So it's Pesach and you don't eat gebrocks. And you want to make Kiddush. You come home after davening, you're not ready to eat the suda yet, but you want to make Kiddush. And all you have is shahakal cake. You don't eat gebrocks, so you don't have mezainis cake. So you don't have mezainis to make Kiddush b'makom suda. Maybe you're also short on wine, because you just had 2 starim, and you drank up all your wine. So you don't really have wine. Maybe you have enough wine for one person. So the Mekadesh is going to be able to drink a revius of yayin. but you've got 10 family members. You don't have 10 reviusin of yayin for them. So how are they going to make kiddush b'makom suda? According to the Mishnah Berurah, you're up a creek without a paddle. You can't, there's nothing you can do. The only thing you're going to be able to do is make kiddush, wash, and everybody start eating matzah. So they'll eat a kazayas of matzah, and now you have kiddush b'makom suda. But you're not ready to wash. The suda's not ready yet. So according to the Mishnah Berurah, you got a problem. Because since the people are not going to be able to be yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda now, they're not allowed to eat. That's what the Mishnah Berurah just said, the case of the kiddush. You went to the kiddush, you don't have cake, you don't have anything, you don't have a revius yayin, you can't have kiddush b'makom suda, so you're not allowed to eat. You can't eat before kiddush, and you're not being yotzeh kiddush. According to Rav Moshe, you can. Rav Moshe holds that you can make kiddush. The kiddush is going to be matir you to eat, because you already made kiddush. Your chiyuv of kiddush, you made kiddush. So now you're already allowed to eat. But you want to eat your shahakal cake? Go ahead, eat your shahakal cake. But you are not yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda. Since you weren't yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda, when it's time for the suda, you're going to have to make kiddush again. So you hear what I'm saying, according to Rav Moshe? You're yotzeh kiddush, but you're not yotzeh kiddush. What do I mean? You're yotzeh your chiyuv of kiddush by hearing kiddush, by making kiddush. You're yotzeh your chiyuv of kiddush to the extent that now it's mutter for you to eat. Like this, before you hear kiddush, you're not allowed to eat. You heard kiddush, so now you're allowed to eat. So you can eat your shahakal cake. And when you finish, you'll make a bar nefashos. But were you yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda? No, because you didn't have a suda. Since you weren't yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda, now when it's time to make the suda, you're going to have to make kiddush again. But you were allowed to eat. According to the Mishnah Berurah, you're not allowed to eat. So just an interesting chilik over here, lahalacha, an interesting shita of Rav Moshe's, and an interesting nafkamina lahalacha. Okay, let's go weiter. Says the Ramah, second line down. We've already done most of the page, as you can see. Let's try to finish over here. Says the Ramah, second line down. Haga, ulafizeh. According to this halacha, according to what halacha? According to the halacha of the Mechaber, that you could be yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda on a revius of yayin, right? That's one of the two things that the Mechaber said. He said you could be yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda with a kazayas of lechem. You could be yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda with a revius of yayin. Says the Ramah, ulafizeh, according to this. Let's say you have a Shabbos bris. Now, by a Shabbos bris, you finish davening. People didn't make kiddush yet. Now you're going to do the bris. By the bris, you have a kois. You make a bar priagofen, right? So now, really, technically, the bar priagofen is kiddush. Says the Ramah, you have a kois of yayin. Ulafizeh, hayamuter l'mayelu l'sadik lishtais b'kois shal mila b'Shabbos b'shachris im shoysin kishir. According to the Mechaber, if you have a big kois by the bris milah, right? So the one who has the brachas will make a bar priagofen. When he finishes the bracha, if there's a revius of yayin in that kois, he could drink it because he'll drink a revius of yayin. He's yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda, so there's no problem. He's allowed to drink the wine. If the kois has enough that it has a double revius in there. So the one who made the bar priagofen will drink one revius. He could give the kois to the sandik, and the sandik could drink another revius. And there's no problem. They were both yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda. Now, to make the bracha bar priagofen and just take a sip, that you wouldn't be allowed to do. Because if you take a sip, you're not drinking a revius. If you're not drinking a revius, you're not being yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda. Why is my camera acting flaky? Bear with me 1 second. Okay, hopefully it's fine now. So again, to take a sip of the yayin, that would be a problem. Why? Because you didn't make kiddush yet. You make a bar priagofen, how are you taking a sip of yayin? That's not kiddush b'makom suda, a sip. And if you're not yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda, you're not yotzeh kiddush. If you're not yotzeh kiddush, you're not allowed to drink. So says the Ramah, but if the kois is big enough, then the one who had the bracha, he could make bar priagofen and drink a revius and be yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda. And if it has a double revius, then the sandik could also drink a revius. He's also yotzeh kiddush b'makom suda, and therefore he's allowed to drink. Aval, however, says the Ramah, while that math does work, nagu litein latinoik, that's not the minig. The minig is that you have a Shabbos bris, you make the bar priagafen by the bris, and you give the wine to drink to a young child, you give it to a tinoik. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Chav Zayin, if there's enough that the one making the bar priagafen and the sandik could drink kishir. What's kishir? I don't know why my camera is acting flaky over here. I hope that everybody's going to be able to see this properly. I don't know if my computer is acting a bit weird. Okay. Kashir. The Ramah said this works if there's enough for each one to drink a shir. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what does that mean, kashir? Tahainu sheyish to shir revius. Each one has to have enough to drink a revius. Now the Mishnah Berurah points out a very, very important thing, and he says this in the name of the Lavush. We keep on talking about drinking a revius of yayin. If you make kiddush and you drink a revius of yayin, you're yoytze kiddush b'makom suda. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'yesh oimrim she'ena yoytze yidei kiddush b'makom suda afilu yishte shir revius. There are those that say that you're not yoytze kiddush b'makom suda simply by drinking a revius. Rak tzarich lishtois revius yayin milavad hakois shel kiddush. It's not enough to drink a revius of yayin. You need 2 reviusin. Why 2 reviusin? 1 revius for kiddush, 1 revius for kiddush b'makom suda. Okay, let's go weiter to Sivav, says the Mechaber. Really, what's basically a very pashut halacha, says the Mechaber. V'im kiddush bebeisai. If somebody makes kiddush in his house, v'shama shchenoi. Somebody lives in one of these cookie-cutter housing complexes where everybody's living right on top of each other. So v'im kiddush bebeisai, Reuven makes kiddush in his house. V'shama shchenoi, and Shimon, who lives next door, hears Reuven's kiddush. V'shulchanoi aruch lefanov, and Shimon is sitting b'makom suda. He's got his whole table set. His wife has the whole table set. He's got the lechem mishnah there. He's all ready to go. He sits down, and now he hears Reuven making kiddush next door. Yoytze boy, Shimon is yoytze kiddush. The shopper have a makom suda. Why not? Shimon is meeting all the requirements. If Reuven is making kiddush, now continues the Mechaber. Of course, we're talking Shimon has to have kavana. Shimon has to have intent to listen to Reuven's kiddush and be yoytze, umashmi'a lahoitzi. And Reuven, the one who's making the kiddush, has to have kavana to be moitzi Shimon. So this is a weird case. Reuven and Shimon came home from shul together. Reuven says, okay, I'm going inside now to make kiddush. Shimon says, oh, you're going inside to make kiddush? I'm going inside to make my suda. I see my wife has the whole table set. Do me a favor, Reuven. You're going to make kiddush now? Make kiddush loud. Have in mind to be moitzi me. I'm going to sit down by my table. I'm going to listen to your kiddush. And I'm going to have in mind to be yoitza. And it's kiddush b'makom suda because my whole table is set. As soon as you finish making kiddush, I'm going to get up, wash, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to eat the Suda. Says the Mechaber, boom, everything works because it's Kiddush b'makom Suda. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Chav Tes. V'im Kiddush. V'hu adin da'afilu l'chatchila yachal l'kaddish b'beisai k'dei sheyishma shchenoi hadar b'bayis acher. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber says, V'im Kiddush. He makes it sound like if this happened to happen, says the Mishnah Berurah, this would be absolutely l'chatchila. There's nothing wrong with this. Now, if Shimon happens to be, the reason Shimon wants Reuven to be moitzi him is because Shimon doesn't know how to make kiddush. Maybe he's a brand new, hot off the press Bal Tshuva, and he doesn't know how to make kiddush. So if Shimon doesn't know how to make kiddush, so then mahania kiddush shaloi, then Reuven's kiddush will work for Shimon. Afilu hu einoi oichel ba'atzmai. Even if Reuven is going to make kiddush in his house, not drink any wine, and not eat a suda. This goes back to what we learned in the previous shiurim, like we learned earlier in Sif Daled. I'm not going to go back into the whole thing now because it was a very complex sif. But let's remember, basically, we said Reuven is allowed to make kiddush for Shimon. And Reuven, remember, arvus, shared responsibility. Reuven could make kiddush for Shimon. Not only that, Reuven can make the bari pragafen, and he doesn't have to drink any wine, as long as Shimon is going to drink wine. Right? And he can make kiddush. Reuven could make kiddush for Shimon, even if Reuven's not going to eat a suda now. Even if Reuven is not going to be yoytze kiddush now. Maybe he already was Yotze Kiddush. Or maybe he has no interest in being Yotze Kiddush now because he's not ready for his Suda. It doesn't matter. Because of Arvus, he can make Kiddush for Shimon. But the proviso that we learned was, the Mechaber said, you only should do this if Shimon doesn't know how to make Kiddush on his own. If Shimon knows how to make Kiddush on his own, then L'chatchila, Shimon should make his own Kiddush. Especially when it comes to the Bar Pri Hagafen, it's already much more questionable to have Arvus on a Bracha Rishona. We said it works by Kiddush because the Bracha Rishona of Hagafen is an intrinsic part of Kiddush. But it's much more specious, shall we say. And therefore, we don't want to do this, L'chatchila, unless Shimon doesn't know how to make Kiddush. Ukidleil b'sif daled. V'ayin ma'ach kasav nisham b'sif kot l'chav. Oid kasav ha'magen Avram. This would also work if Reuven is making Kiddush ala pas. Reuven could cover the hamaitzi for Shimon. The Mechaber said this works if Shimon's table is set. Says the Mishnah Berurah, near the lav dafka. The language of the Mechaber is not so bedafka, it's not so precise. It doesn't mean that Shimon's table has to be set. It has to have the knives and the forks and the plates and everything has to be ready to go. It doesn't mean that. Even if Pshat is, Shimon says, oh, Reuven, you're going to make Kiddush? Do me a favor. I don't know how to make Kiddush. I'm ready to go inside and have my Suda. You make Kiddush, be might see me in Kiddush. The table's not set, but right after he hears Kiddush, they're going to go into the kitchen, they're going to get the challah, they're going to go sit down by the table, and the mindset is that we're going to eat right away, because says the Mishnah Berurah, remember, we learned yesterday in the Ramah that so long as you make Kiddush with the das, with the intent that you're going to eat la'alter, that's good enough for Kiddush b'makayim suda. Oiskat lamid, but the Mechaber said, of course, we're talking about over here, ukigoyin sheniskavein, there has to be kavana on the part of the Shemeah. Shimon has to have kavana to be yoytze with Reuven's Kiddush, and there has to be kavana, corresponding kavana, on part of the Mekadesh, on part of Reuven who's making the Kiddush to be Moitzi Shimon. Lav dafke b'inyan zeh. This is not a halacha that's only negeya to Hilchas Kiddush. Anytime you're making Kiddush for somebody else, or anytime you're being Moitzi anybody else in any bracha, you're being Moitzi somebody in the bracha of Lishmaya Kol Shofar, he has to have kavanah to be Yoitze with the bracha, you have to have kavanah to be Moitzi him in the bracha. Says the Chavetz Chaim, nowadays, when you have somebody who makes Kiddush in shul, lo yotza hashemeya, the person listening to Kiddush is not yotza, afilu im yiskaven lotzes, even if he has kavanah to be yotza, v'hu roitza lisoy chamachakach, and he's planning on eating a kazayis of cake and having Kiddush b'makom suda, ela im kein niskaven ashliach tzibur lahoitziyai, only if the one making Kiddush has kavanah to be moitzi other people. An analogous halacha to this is, I see many times during Sfira. We all know the halacha that if you miss a day of Sfira, you can't count with a bracha. So people ask somebody to be moitzi them in the bracha. Sometimes people rely on the shliach tzibur, that the shliach tzibur is being moitzi them. Not so quick. You have to ask the shliach tzibur if he has kavanah to be moitzi people. Most of the time, the shliach tzibur has no kavanah to be moitzi people in the bracha. He's making the bracha out loud because that's part of the chazin's job, is to do Sfiras Haimer out loud. But he has no kavanah to be moitzi people. If you want it to be moitzi you got to go over to him and ask him to please be moitzi you. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. This was Limud HaTorah should be vegan against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh should send Yeshua's for first panas and Shadukim to those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Bias Kol Tzedek B'mhera V'Yameinu Amen. Be well.